This question is for Jennifer. You talked about the composition of the groups and how that affects the outcomes. How do you determine how to put the students in the groups? Do they do it randomly or what?
There's different ways of doing it. I teach 200 students, so I let them find their own groups because it's just too much organizational to try and put people into groups. Professors who have smaller classes will put students into groups based on their grades coming in, so that you have a range of abilities in a group. I haven't done it myself, but research has been done to show that age, sex, and race have no effect on how well a group will work. It's more difference in abilities.
Another one for Jennifer. The question is one of the timing of the steps that you go through with the groups. I do some groups myself, and as we go through it, I'm often finding they need to come together at the end of that process to find out sort of where they are, make sure they're doing it correctly, and perhaps sharing across groups as well. I didn't see that particular step in yours. In fact, it sometimes went beyond and they had to go back and then repeat. And I'm just wondering about the timing of that, giving them feedback, making sure they're comfortable with knowing what they know is correct and not just some dead end they've gone off to. How is that built in the way you're working it?
Okay, so I said no lecturing. That's not actually true. What I do is, and I picked this up again from Dr. Rudner at VCU, is I hand out sheets to random groups and tell them, write down your answer to question 5. And then I'll come back, get their answer, and I'll post it up there, and we'll have a discussion about question 5. And if I feel like most of the class is lost on question 5, then I will actually give a mini lecture to try and get more detail on that. And of course, I pick the questions that are the draw a conclusion type questions.
This is for Adrienne. You talked about the tutors being assessed. How often are they assessed throughout the semester? Is it done on a regular basis? And you mentioned they get feedback regarding that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yes, sir. Okay. Can you hear me? You can hear me? Okay. I believe the way it works is typically at the end of the semester, I think they are given an evaluation and they actually have to take a test. And I know that process because I've seen the students actually have to go in the room and actually take an exam based on what they're actually tutoring in. And they actually have to make a certain grade on that exam in order to actually continue to be a tutor. And they take it very seriously because from all of our students, they actually enjoy tutoring. So they take it seriously that if they don't do well, they actually will not be tutoring anymore. So they actually get that, and if I'm not mistaken, at least once a semester. The evaluations, like I said, the students are actually, when you're coming in for tutoring, every session that you have a tutoring session with the tutors, you actually give an evaluation on that tutor. And we pick those evaluations up daily, and they're looked at pretty much almost every day or at least on a weekly basis. So they look at the comments, and if there are comments that are concerning, we take those very seriously, and those tutors are addressed, whether they can do something better or something they need to completely stop, or just whatever we need to do to make sure the students are being able to be successful with their tutoring process, and just making sure that it is a very conducive environment. So if you have a tutor who's not very responsive, or maybe they are trying to look at a video when they should be tutoring, that's nipped in the bud right away, and they are told that either you stop that or you have to find someplace else to work because the students come first. So they're evaluated on both sides, the physical material of the subject and also making sure they're evaluated as being a tutor.
I have a question for CJ. CJ, I know that Dr. Gable probably uses case studies, but how long, first, do you have a compiled, set of cases? Do you continually write them, and do they correspond to chapter-related information? I just thought you could elaborate just a tad.
Well, thanks, Linda. Yeah, what we did was, rather than build the case studies around chapters, what we did was build the cases around competencies, and that way we don't have to worry about paralleling a specific text if we want to change the text, and then we just essentially change the ordering So, for example, if one text starts with positive approaches while another text starts with, who knows, data collection, we just change the ordering of the case study. And what we found was that over time we've compiled a fair number of cases that we can draw from, and we edit and constantly are in the process of updating because the field of education is changing. I mean, the kinds of problems we're seeing in the classroom today are not anything like the problems that we saw 25, 30 years ago. Telling a teacher to shut up might be the best thing that happens to them, and so that is, we have to get a little more down to the nuts and bolts, and that's what we've tried to do over time. That's a great question, though. Thank you.
I had a question for math department. Well, since math is the basis for all the science classes, and you showed some numbers showing that with tutoring you have increased success for the students. Those numbers, in my opinion, contain a little bit of redundancy. Have you ever tried to track those students through the other science classes to see their success rate versus non-tutored ones through the science classes, other sciences that they take? Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay, I'm sorry. Well, at the moment, we're just looking at the Math and Science Resource Center is just looking at chemistry and math. So I wouldn't be able to talk about what the other courses are doing, but I know, like I said, going forward, who knows, maybe there's something we might be able to do and track in other classes. But our thing right now, we were really looking at what we call those death rate classes, those math courses. And like I said, not just in our college, but in other colleges as well, college algebra and pre-calculus, and even general chemistry, they're the highest rate. So that's the ones that we were tracking, and that's the one we're doing tutoring for. So, yeah, so at the moment, no to that answer, but who knows? With more resources, maybe we can actually offer that and actually track for other classes.
I can say that students who come into organic who have used the tutoring center for general will go use it for organic. I don't have any data on if they do better, but I know that they, once they start using it, that's a resource they continue to use.
Lynn, I was wondering if you could elaborate on the portfolio mentors and their purpose and their application.
In the pre-licensure program, the portfolio is part of our role transition practicum, which is, sort of, I think the closest I can make it to is like a student teaching experience. The nursing students get paired with a nurse who they work within that schedule, and they have a faculty person who's watching them at the hospital, monitoring their progress, and working with them to develop the portfolio. So right now this summer, I have 10 students that are mine that are going to graduate in August, and I meet with them weekly. We have a seminar class every Monday afternoon when they're finished with their other classes where we talk about their experiences, what they've done, what they've learned, where we sit down together and say, okay, these are the papers you've written. How do they meet our end of program behaviors? Which ones do you want to use to showcase your ethical decision making and your clinical judgment and your reasoning, your thinking, your ability to provide holistic care to a variety of patients? So we meet with them and help them as they need to take individual assignments and make them see the bigger picture. And then we also work with them from the technical aspect to build with, this. Haven't had to do as much technical part as I thought we were going to because of this, but for, every once in a while someone comes in with their laptop and says, okay, I've hit this 27 times and I can't make it work. And we're like, okay, let's back up. Let's look at it again. Sometimes it's, the site has gone down for a little bit. You just need to give it a few hours and it's going to load. Sometimes it's starting back from scratch. We have faculty who have done this who aren't the world's most technical savvy people who have been able to use this and go through. So we do help them thinking for the big picture, looking and deciding, and also with the technical building part. And for the post-licensure students, we also help them build their presentation because they're giving a presentation to the rest of the people in the group. There's about 20 per group there that they're working on building an oral presentation, how you're going to do public speaking skills. So we'll work with those things with them as well as just talk to them as they develop their role during their last semester when they're working in the hospital, shift after shift after shift, trying to make the jump from the safety of having a faculty member behind you all the time at the hospital to being on your own in a couple months. So we do a lot of things. Portfolio is just one part of it. But you are assigned a specific person who you see weekly, if not more often. And online, that means see them, in Adobe or, for our distance folks.
I was really interested in that. It seemed like all four of you were really interested in the process of learning as opposed to just the outcomes. It's really easy to see if you have track people across 6 semesters. Most of the time we don't have, most of us don't have students for more than a semester or so. So I know, Jennifer, you were talking a lot about these key process skills, and I wondered, and CJ, it seemed to me like with the case studies you were interested in more or less the same kinds of things. Are there ways in which, I know it's not primarily what you're up to, but are there ways in which you've tracked progress in those kinds of skills, or do you know of somebody else who's tracking that? So we know that these processes really do develop those kinds of skills.
I don't myself track that. I don't know if the POGL. My guess would be that they do track that somehow. One thing that I didn't mention and that they're really trying to do now is to put in questions into the worksheets that make them focus on the process skills, not just the content. So I don't have it so much in mind, but at the end of each worksheet for the first semester, there's a question, what's one thing you still don't understand? And then there's one question, what was one thing your group did well today? And the next week it would be, next class would be, what's one thing your group did bad today? What's one thing each person contributed today? So to try and get them to think about their group dynamics and those kind of additional skills.
Kyle, you hit the nail on the head. It's about process. It's not an event, And so what we try to do, especially with the cases, in a lot of my cases, what I will do is it's very objective. They have objective answers that we're looking for, but then we'll have a question at the end that we change one of the variables. Now all of a sudden one element changes, and that changes your answer. And that's how we kind of try to measure process. Because if you're locked into only objective answers, they die in that model, because then they just don't know what the right answer is. So it's really designed to really look at that. And we're using a package called Live Text. I don't know if any of you are familiar with that, but in the College of Ed, we're using it for accreditation purposes. And it's really, we're starting to see some real value to it, because that's what we're going to be able to do is have our students insert these case studies in Live Text, and we'll actually be able to monitor growth across time, even though it's a semester. But what we'll also be able to do is show growth across courses, and I think that's really where we're going. As we're doing more of these kinds of things with our other classes, we should be able to see that development in critical thinking and problem solving that is so important, and being able to do things on your feet. So that's a great point, and yeah, we're working at it.
One question for Jennifer and one for CJ. Jennifer, do you find in your use of the worksheets that they succeed more in applications of quantitative versus qualitative data? Because the essence of my question is, do you see your technique succeeding in fields that are more qualitative in nature, say, for example, English composition? You may or may not be able to respond to that given your specialty field, but...
Yeah, not really. I can tell you that at least on my exams, that I see a shift in the types of problems that they get correct versus what they get wrong. And so I see a shift to that they're doing much better on the concept problems and worse on the memorization problems since I went to the worksheets. So I need to try and get rid of the memorization problems, I think.
To what extent does your encapsulation of anticipatory case studies sort of overlap into what certain members of my group do, namely sample student papers? Is this basically a parallel or a similar technique or device?
Absolutely. It's just what I really wanted to tap into was to show our students that they knew an awful lot already coming in. They may not know the exact precise language, but they knew a lot of the concepts. They knew a lot of the elements. And what my job then became really clear was to refine that, to make sense of it, to show how it linked to the theory. Because, in education, so much of what we do is based on history and theory, and students don't want that. They really don't want the theoretical perspective. And I understand that, because as a practitioner for over 30 years, the last thing that I want to do is beat you to death with the theory, but you've got to know where you've been in order to know where you're going. You don't want to make the mistakes of the past. And also, it's very important to understand yourself and where and how you align in terms of your practice. Not everybody is a behaviorist. That happens to be my area. I measure, and that's when you were, interestingly, when you were saying about quantitative and qualitative, it's very hard as an educator because so much of what we do is qualitative, yet at the same time, we want to make everything move, right? We want it measurable, observable, and objective. And it's not that simple when you're dealing with people. And, so it really has become, it's become a journey for us to figure out how to link these things together to assess more effectively.
And do you find that the use of the anticipatory case studies actually allows them by, say, for example, facilitating error identification of another individual's work, that translates into better self-assessment techniques for the student in question?
Absolutely, and we have to be real careful with this because one of the ground rules in my class is that you can't say, "Oh, that was stupid." You're not allowed to do that. I can do that, but no, they're not allowed to do that. You get people who really do embrace the idea that there's no failure. They'll say a lot of things, and in a way, I find that to be very refreshing because it allows us to really almost use an errorless approach where we can work backwards from it and try and reshape the answer to something that makes a little more sense. The students learn from each other, and they'll ask questions. I found that especially as we get past the midway point, they begin to question themselves, and I have to do less of that, which is really refreshing because that, again, goes back to what is the truest form of, that you really know the material, and that's the ability to teach it to others and share with others. So those are great questions, and I certainly think those are really at the basis of why we're doing what we're doing.
Thank you both.
Thank you.